All right, chapter 3 in the textbook introduces a concept called deep structure. And deep structure is composed of 3 primary components, which I'll get to in a little bit. And chapter 3 explores the first of those, which is family. So I'm going to go through this publisher's PowerPoint, highlight a few things. A lot of it, I believe the textbook can speak for itself, and there'll be a few areas in which I'll probably add some concepts and some materials. So these are some of the fundamental ideas covered in the textbook. This idea of deep structure has to do with those social institutions, and like I had mentioned before, family is one of those. So the concept of deep structure is explored in terms of why that's important. And if you think of that as being the fundamental roots, the fundamental core of a culture, then you're getting a little bit close to a concept of what deep structure is all about. The 3 main areas within deep structure are these: family, state or history, as well as religion. And each one of those will become a chapter as we progress through this. So today we focus on the first of those deep structures, which is looking at how family varies across cultures. But before we get into that, the book explains why deep structure is so important, and each of these bulleted points are some of the main reasons why deep structure is important. These social institutions, these pieces of deep structure, family, history, and religion, carry the most important messages, carry messages that last, and carry messages that people are, that they feel very importantly about. These are the issues that people are willing to die for. The institutions that are responsible for teaching those to a people are generally in these categories of family, history, and religion. So these institutions perpetuate critically important messages for a culture's people. They also deal with messages that deal with your personal identity and your concept of who you are. So those 4 fundamental reasons are why deep structure is so important. So now we dive into the first, the issue of family and why it's so important. I think it's important to understand it's definitely one of the oldest units in terms of a socializing agent, and definitely one of the oldest human institutions, and is fundamental and cross-cultural. Cross-cultural is in many, many, many different ethnic groups. Here you have a definition of that, and you can pause and take note of that if you want to. There are different types of families. Oh, by the way, if I'm going fast, it's because I know you can stop and rewind. The nuclear family is a very small family, generally based on parent and child, and here you see some continual attributes or explanations, some elaborations on the concept of a nuclear family. Extended family obviously is going to be a larger family. This is more common in collectivistic cultures, so it includes extended family like aunts and uncles and cousins and so on and so forth. And these families are very bonded together. Oftentimes they live together. All right, another way to look at family is in terms of these forms of family. Family of orientation is the one that you were born into. Family of procreation, what they call family formed with your mate, is that which the family that you create becomes your children. There are different societal changes that have influenced and shaped and altered families and the relationships within families and the importance of those families. And here you find a few of those issues listed: this economic, technological, different demographics that has to do with domestic migration, gender roles, opportunities for women. Your grandmother more than likely was a stay-at-home mom. Most women today are working moms. Things like that will change over the years and as roles change and things like that. There are new different family types, whether it's the traditional family, it's a single-parent household, it's 2 people who've just never married, and then of course you can have your gay, your lesbian relationships, and single individuals who adopt. So certainly in current society, there's not one-size-fits-all form of family. Globalization, how does that affect family? Well, certainly here you're going to find the notion of mass media and that influence on family, which is tremendous in terms of this image of what a normal family is oftentimes perpetuated by media. Migration, mentioned that a little earlier, and this has to do with the fact that, for example, I know many people who could afford to buy houses further inland couldn't afford to buy a house where their job was out on the west, out on the coast, and so they migrated, they moved. So that can have some influence. Exploring some of the functions of family. We'll go over all of them. You can see some of the critical ones listed here. Communication, culture, and family. It's important to understand that family is a product of communication and is also the context or the location in which family takes place. And certainly there are many communication skills that are taught within a family setting. Here you have some of the gender roles that are taught within family. And they're pretty straightforward. And you can see how they vary from culture to culture. And certainly how westernization has influenced the role of women. Some fascinating studies have been done recently and been published in different journals talking about the role of women evolving, particularly in a third world country. It is, this last caution here, it's very important that you guard against applying Western expectations and Western standards to all cultures, because that's very ethnocentric if you do that. Looking at the notion of individualism and collectivism, you're all familiar with this concept now, and certainly you can explore families by looking at this particular definition, and here you see some correlation between individualism and family and collectivism and family. And it continues. Okay, other variations or elements that are important and come into play when it comes to family is certainly how we handle the elderly and the view of the elderly. And the U.S. predominantly has a significant influence on youth and on younger. And on the exceptions you can see here are Native American and African American. Very different from some other cultures in terms of the way or the value of the elderly. Social skills, how you interact, when parents teach their children proper ways to greet when somebody comes to the door, what is appropriate, saying please and thank you. Those are just fundamental social skills that are taught within the family. Aggression. In the family situation, a child is taught, stand up for yourself, speak your mind. Well, if that wasn't right, you should have said something. Why didn't you tell your teacher that you did that assignment? I mean, we encourage that. As certain cultures, they avoid that. You don't do that. You don't tell if the teacher said that, then that's what the truth is. And if you have a different opinion, either you're wrong or you need to go to the teacher respectfully outside the situation. Do you turn the other cheek on a team when another child does a aggressive play in an athletic situation on your child? Do you teach that child it's all right, just keep going, or do you teach them to not put up with it, and if you get bumped, bump back? You're making decisions. Do you dress your children, or children are allowed to pick their own clothes? I mean, there's so many different issues that are taught within a family. And that, very quickly, in under 9 minutes, is chapter 3.